This is kind of an irrelevant point, Clay, but I think that's why we should bring it up in the beginning here. I really like Martok's story about his dog that his wife lost.
You know, it's funny. I was kind of last episode when Cisco was telling Kai Winn about what the prophet said to him. He says like, they told me that my path would be nothing but darkness and struggle. I was kind of expecting Kai Winn to turn towards the camera and go, "That's called marriage." So this is pretty close. Martok filled that hole pretty well today.
I think it's this will connect when we start the discussion about the actual episode. But I like that scene because it's good Star Trek writing, in my opinion, because it's this like alien story that uses all this alien terminology, and it views marriage as only the Klingons would, which is a series of battles that you have with your spouse. But it's also like a human, relatable story that's kind of charming and touching that Martok has. That it's been a trait of Martok's too. He's always been infatuated with his wife in every episode that we've seen where he brings her up. So it's a neat little tie-in to the main story here.
The only downside for me is that Cisco equates sneakily getting rid of a pet with forcing your wife into some sort of religious ceremony. Because when she says no, he's like, the battle begins.
I always think,
like, dude, why don't you dial it down a bit? You've been married for 2 days. Don't make her do readings at your church.
Is he not talking about, because he does it as he's like adding some spice to the stew.
I know.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck you, I'm adding more hot sauce to this.
We're going to be talking about Strange Bedfellows, but right now you're going to hear some music.
Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints, just people.
All right, everybody. So, Strange Bedfellows is the name of the episode they're up to. It's the 19th episode of the 7th season. Aired on April 21st, 1999. Written by Ronald D. Moore. Directed by Renee Auberjonois. In this episode, the Dominion and the Breen negotiate an alliance. Ezri and Worf are sentenced to death on Cardassia. So here we go, Clay. I'll say, I'll start this off and I'll throw it to you. This is the best of the 3 episodes we've seen for the final chapter, in my opinion. And I think that really all that this one comes down to is that Ronald Moore is a better writer than Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, who wrote the previous one, because this is virtually the same episode, except it's much better, and things actually happen in this one. And he's much better at writing dialogue. He's much better at sort of building the scenes off of underlying narratives that are going on. So like the scenes sort of link together in a more effective way than the previous episode. But it's virtually identical to Til Death Do Us part in terms of structure and what's going on in it. It's just a much better version of that story.
Yeah, you know, I don't really know what to make of all of this so far, because it's kind of losing me. Where they end up at the end of this again is fine. Like I like the stuff with Kai Winn turning her back on everything, and that was pretty much it for me. The stuff with Worf and Ezri is fine, but it's just the pace of it is killing me. Like I feel like they could have done all of this in 2 episodes.
Yeah.
All 3 of these episodes in like 2 episodes, and it's, I don't know. I really like the stuff with Damar. I see what you're saying, that it's kind of doing the stuff from the last episode, but they're just doing it a little bit better and a little bit faster, and
resolving it too. Worf and Ezri get resolved in this one.
Yeah, not faster, but like they're making more character moves, which is then moving the story forward, even though it's not actually moving forward that much compared to the last episode.
Well, here's what I'll say the difference is for Worf and Ezri specifically, right? In the last episode, they were on a ship where you did not know where they were going or why they were being taken there, right? In this one, they are prisoners of the Dominion. And because they're prisoners of the Dominion, it allows the Damar story to kick off in some ways. So there's like a meaning to the Worf and Ezri conflict. It's not just them only sitting in a room that you're unsure of what's going on, talking to each other. They're layered on top of the story in a much better way than they were in the last episode.
Sure. I still think they're spending a lot of time not really doing anything.
That's true. They come to terms here. I'll defend it by saying it's over. They've finished that disagreement between them, because it has been 3 episodes of bickering between them.
Yeah, I think that's just what's dragging me down, is that it's taken them 3 episodes to do not much with them, and 3 episodes of like giving them a lot of screen time. Mm-hmm. And the ultimate result is kind of like something they could have done shortly after they hooked up on the planet, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Instead of taking all this time. That being said, my favorite thing in the episode is the Damar and Weyoun and Dominion stuff. I think that stuff was really good. That was the one story that really felt like it was kind of trucking forward. The Kai Winn stuff, again, is, I don't know. I just don't, the prophet shit just doesn't hook me. Like, I get it. I like where it ends up, but like I think the last scene with her is really good. I don't know.
I actually don't like the last scene all that much, but
oh really? Well, I mean, I like it. It's
very super villainy dialogue.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they're definitely turning her. I think I probably like the scene with Kira a little bit better.
Yes.
But even there, when that one started, I was like, oh boy, they're going to talk about the will of the prophets for 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I like where it ended up. I don't know. This is a weird episode for me. It's got good stuff in it, but it's just the pace is really dragging me down.
Is being repaired.
Septimus 3 has fallen.
Excuse me.
Septimus 3. An entire Cardassian order has been wiped out. 500,000 men.
Oh, yes. A great tragedy.
You promised reinforcements.
I promised nothing of the kind. I said the situation will be dealt with, and it was.
By leaving them to be slaughtered by the Klingons.
If you will calm down and listen, I will explain. The sacrifice made by the 11th Order will not be in vain. They forced the Klingons to commit worthwhile, valuable troops and resources to capture a strategically worthless planet. I'm glad you agree.
Well, I don't. You condemned 500,000 loyal Cardassians.
If they were truly loyal Cardassians, then they died willingly for the Dominion. There could be no greater sacrifice.
How many more sacrifices will my people be asked to make?
I guess the better place to start would be, because I don't think there's much to say about the Worf and Ezri storyline at this point. It's basically over now, which is a relief in and of itself.
Also, like, I think the thing bumming me out about that is it's 3 episodes of them doing nothing for the only reason is so they can have someone for Damar to defect with.
Yep. And
I don't know. I just feel like there's a cleaner way they could have done that.
Yeah.
That didn't take so much time.
Yeah, and in terms of structure, it is surprising that we haven't seen the other characters. Really? Like not
at all.
They're not mixing. You would think that okay, if you only have 40 minutes, you're just going to do 3 episodes of story, and maybe you can't possibly touch on everybody in the show, but you would think that they would alternate character stories between episodes. Like you sort of bounce back and forth between people you hadn't seen in this episode and people you've seen in the next one, and vice versa and whatever. But they're really, like, Odo and Kira are basically non-entities in this one. Bashir and O'Brien have that one scene where they talk about Ezri is missing. Yeah, it just doesn't. You'd think they'd be more effective with. I'd be fine with the Worf and Ezri stuff if it wasn't so prominent. If it wasn't a third of the total runtime of 3 episodes, you basically got an entire episode of these two dealing with each other. But they don't bounce each other. They don't bounce other characters in or out in a very effective way, and it's surprising to me because, as you're saying, if these guys are just going to be bait for Damar to send back to the Federation, then it took a long time to get there to that point.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know. I just feel like there's a better way they could have done it. Like, I don't know. It's just it is a long time to dedicate to something that is ultimately just servicing a different plot.
So we can both talk about something that you said that you liked and something that I really like, which is the Damar storyline in this one, which I think that they have done. I think that Damar's arc is actually maybe the best, cleanest, sensible arc out of all of the backup characters on this show. The way he starts as it's a combination of a great performance and great writing, where he starts as this kind of like second in command, no name person that Dukat talks to just to sort of exposition things into existence. He then becomes Dukat's replacement. And he's just this like impotent stand-in for Dukat, where he is more symbolic of to keep the Cardassians thinking that they actually matter in the grand scheme of the Dominion. So he's given this sort of useless, impotent position where he is secondary to Weyoun and constantly overridden. Like there's no idea that he ever gives out that is considered to be a good idea or a good thought. And then they bring him to this point where he's starting to chafe under what the Dominion are doing with the Cardassian casualties, and he makes a decision to turn against them. I think that the key thing for Damar here that's really good writing is that he doesn't turn out of some sense of what he's doing is wrong. He turns out of the fact that he thinks he needs to protect Cardassia going forward. Yeah. So it's not this idea that the Federation have been right all along and I'm going to go back on them. He's really just annoyed. And it perfectly makes sense with the way that the Cardassians think about themselves, because Dukat and Waltz had that thing about we're better than the Bajorans, we're more advanced than them, therefore it's righteous that we take advantage of them. The Cardassians think very highly of themselves, so for them to have been so under the boot of the Dominion for so long, it totally makes sense for a character like Damar to kind of chafe against that and then flip it on them as a true like Cardassian patriot, which is really interesting.
Yeah, they do a really great job of saving him from being just a mustache twirling villain by having him care about the people of his planet, essentially. Whereas Weyoun and the Dominion are still fairly Empire-esque, like Star Wars Empire-esque, where they're just sort of their thing is evil. That they want to rule everything, and it's kind of nebulous and big speeches about stuff that is ultimately kind of like questionable in motivation. But Damar is seeing he's now put in the position of seeing the cost of what the Dominion is trying to do, and the Cardassian gulls. Is he a gull?
He's a legate or legat, I think is how they pronounce it. Legate, yeah. The great thing that they do with them, which they took from Dukat and put onto Damar, is that they will act underhandedly, but they always tend to do it in service of Cardassia. And so it makes perfect sense that Cardassia is no longer the most important thing for Weyoun and the Dominion, but it is still the most important thing for Damar. Right. So he's going to act with Cardassia and Cardassia's best interest in mind, and not just trust that once the new hotness of the Breen wears off, that they're going to come back and start treating him right. Yeah, it's that meme, right, where the kid's looking backwards at the girl walking past as his girlfriend is.
I think the Breen look ridiculous, but they are hilarious in this episode. The way that Weyoun interacts with them, like when Damar comes in and it's like meow, 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 and Weyoun's like, ha ha ha, yes, he does look like that. That stuff is really funny.
Yeah, their voice is funny. Weyoun's perfect understanding of what the point that they're getting across works pretty well. The Breen are not a fleshed
They even have like in jokes where the guy's like, and Damar's like, what did he say? And Weyoun's like, ha, 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 ha.
He said to fix
you need to get your fix your universal translator.
The Breen are not obviously fleshed out. They are just supposed to symbolize like the replacement of Cardassia. Cardassia was useful to the Dominion until they became unuseful, and then the Breen replaced them as that kind of useful army fodder that the Dominion need.
Well, I would argue that they're not fodder. I think Cardassia is now. Cardassia is just expendable guys.
Yep.
Whereas the Breen actually have some sort of value to them more than that. So of course that's how they're being treated for the time being.
Right. So the use of the Cardassians in this one is that they kill 500,000 of them just to cause the Klingons to not be somewhere else at that time. And so they are just fodder to be thrown into the buzzsaw or whatever for the Dominion. I think that, it's the Cardassians view themselves as they are sort of statists, but they're also, as you say, at the same time, extremely narcissistic and want like individual glory, which is why it's really effective when every time that Damar questions something or tries to change course, Weyoun's bringing up of the Founders means nothing to him, right? Like like doing this for the glory of the Founders is irrelevant to any of the Cardassians, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think that they just write that really well, where he's a character who totally makes sense in and of his universe. He's basically become like an improved version of Dukat. If you wanted to like make Dukat slightly more bearable of a person, you would turn him into Damar. And I think that it ties in nicely. The one good scene from the last episode, I think, is Dukat is the reason for this instigation of change in Damar. He gives him that pep talk about saying like, seize your own destiny and it's time for you to do what you need to do. And yeah, it's really satisfying. It's a nice change. I like that Damar doesn't run off with Worf and Ezri. He stays behind on Cardassia to act as a mole for the Federation. So it's all good and it's moving places.
And I also
just to mention killing his line about if you don't please the Founder, I look forward to meeting Weyoun 9. Yeah.
Yes. He also doesn't. He's very effectively underwritten as far as dialogue goes. I shouldn't say underwritten because that implies that there's something wrong. I actually think it's a benefit. Because he's unlike Dukat, he's not long-winded about his motivations and where his mindset is at the time. It's not like he's freeing Dax and Worf and then they're like, "Why are you doing this?" And he says, "For too long, the Dominion has put Cardassia under its boot," that kind of stuff. He's just like, "Listen, just get out of here." Like he does a lot of acting through drinking in these two episodes, and he's very good at it.
He is.
He doesn't have to have long-winded speech like the stuff that Kai Winn ends up doing, where she's talking about how the prophets turn their back on her or blah blah blah. He doesn't have to do any of that stuff. It's solely through watching how he is affected by the other characters and then the actions he chooses to take because of it. And
apparently, Kanar is like honey or something. I know they had to thicken it so that when he throws it on the mirror, it doesn't just splash off and you can't see it anymore. So they had to add some kind of stickiness to it. But it looks like he's drinking honey, it seems like. It's very viscous.
It made a very disgusting noise when it hit that mirror.
I like that. I do like Damar in this storyline. And I think that it functions... it's probably the best, most interesting storyline so far, just because it feels like it has action to it and a lot of subtext and things going on. But at the same time, it's not racing the plot, really. It makes a drastic change for Damar at the end of this, but it's not. It's been building in the same way that the other stories have. It just feels more effective when it gets to the end. Like the turn of Damar switching is way more effective than Worf and Ezri coming to terms with their relationship. It just feels like it matters in a way that one doesn't.
Yeah, definitely. I think so far the biggest misstep across these 3 episodes is the Worf and Ezri stuff. It's just, I don't know. I feel like there's a better way they could have done it. Yeah, and the last point about the Damar, I do love the way he treats the death of Weyoun when Worf kills Weyoun and he just kind of laughs at it and is like, fucking idiot. Like, I'll just get another one of these. But he also has a great line, which is why Ron Moore is a better writer than Weddle and the other guy, Thompson. He has a line about, "You should have killed me. There's only one Damar," which is a very perfect encapsulation of his entire action towards why he thinks killing the Cardassians is wrong. Like he's brought up before, the Jem'Hadar and the Vorta are just clones, essentially, who are grown in laboratories, and he views the Cardassians as different than that and special, and he brings it about to himself and sort of makes it like a self-actualized thing about, I'm the only one here that matters. Like the Weyouns don't matter, but I matter, and you can't kill me. Yeah, definitely. So we can talk about Kai Winn and Angel, whatever Dukat is pretending to play here. Am I alone? I don't think Louise Fletcher is good in this role. Would you disagree? I don't know. No, not really. She's not great in this episode, I don't think.
Do you think she's good in general? I've never been. I would rank her very much in the bottom of all of the guest recurring actors, like in terms of whether or not they're effective as that character.
Yeah, I think she's a little too flat for the dynamics that Kai Winn has going on. She kind of tends to deliver everything the same way, regardless of dramatic intensity.
Yeah.
Like
context. Context is irrelevant to her, yeah.
She talks to Sisko with the same intonation that she talks about switching allegiances to the Power Wraiths. Yeah. And I don't know, it sort of loses a bit of its effectiveness.
She does terrible banging on Dukat's chest,
I was just going to say that. Yes, it's very much like she doesn't want to hurt him.
Yeah.
But she has to make the motion.
It's like it's like pretending to knock on a door, or if you're filming yourself, but the door is very hard and you don't want to hurt your knuckles, so you pull back at the last second to stop and save yourself. Mm-hmm. I think the Bajoran stuff, the problem with the Bajoran stuff, I think, is that it totally fits in with the series, and that you kind of have to end the series with the Bajorans in a lot of ways, but it's just like it doesn't really grab you, and it doesn't. It doesn't feel like Kai Winn has been that important where this would kind of feel emotionally satisfying for her to get to this point. Mm-hmm. I think the ending for her is very superhero of a supervillain reveal, and I don't really like that. But I do like as you were saying, the Kira scene where her realizing that her doing the right thing would result in her also losing power is the perfect encapsulation of that character. And so I would have ended it there, I think, and I wouldn't have had the final Dukat scene where they talk about their plans to rule the universe. Yeah, well, I think I guess you kind of have to make, well, maybe you don't. I was going to say you kind of have to make your intentions clear about what she's going to be doing from that point on. Maybe you don't. Maybe you can be more subtle about it. Take the earring out. All they have to do is take the earring out, and that means everything. Oh yeah, there you go. That's actually really good. I think the stuff that she's doing in that scene with Kira is what was missing from the last episode. Not in actual content, but just the way she is dealing with those things. I'm not being super clear. The way that scene with Kira works is she is clearly conflicted about power versus her belief, and they are kind of butting heads in a way that I was hoping they would do in the last episode when Dukat comes to her the first time, where she's got two things going on that are kind of pushing back against each other. So she wouldn't be as immediately accepting of Dukat as she was. There would be a little bit more pushback, be like, oh, well, the prophets, the double, but I don't know. I can't write this dialogue. But you know what I mean though, right? Yeah, I do. Yeah. The last episode, she was just so easily railroaded by Dukat. I found it kind of surprising. Whereas in this one, when she's presented with an obstacle that would be not beneficial or I'm sorry, my brain isn't working today, or damaging to her own aspirations, that conflict starts coming out in a much more interesting way than just watching her, be odd that Dukat knows the other people who are in her high school yearbook. Yeah. We talked about in the last episode, I have to pat myself on the back. People might think I was doing a very subtle job of leading you towards what was going to happen. I actually did not remember that this is what they do. That we were talking in the last one about how it would have been more effective if Dukat was playing up her jealousy of Sisko as the emissary. And it would have been a way, and they actually do that in this one. It's much more the focus that he chooses to go with. Dukat chooses to say that you will never live up to the eyes of the prophets the way that Sisko does, and he doesn't deserve it, so what are you going to do about it? I didn't remember that's the way it was, but it is. I am glad that the show realized that that's the better way for Winn to be personally motivated by what's going on, and not just Dukat impressing her with trivia of the past that he knows and that only the prophets would know. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think I did. My favorite thing in the entire episode is the little is the way Dukat exits the room after he kind of like breaks her. She's like kind of breaking down, and he's walking towards the door, and he pauses and looks back, and then does this like back roll around, like jaunty
rolls around the corner of the door.
Yeah, jaunty villain back roll around the door frame to leave, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah, I Louise Fletcher just that reminds me, because I don't know if it's that same scene, but she has a scene where she's like overcome by it and collapses near the window and stuff like that. I just don't think it's very good. It's not effective.
Yeah,
it doesn't work.
Hey, you know
who's the best actor though compared to her is her Bajoran servant, who's clearly just over everything that's going on. He's like, oh, as you wish, bitch. Yeah.
I understand that. I don't know. Maybe this is part of my problem with the Prophets is like you got a scene where what is their level of omniscience, you know? Because you've got this scene where you've got a Kai who is just been told that this guy has been sent to her by the Pa race because the Prophets never did anything for her. And then she goes and she gets the orb from the altar and opens the orb, and the Prophets don't do anything then. And then she spends a bunch of time praying about it afterwards, and they don't do anything then. Just show up.
Yeah.
All the Prophets have to do is show up and be like, hey, we're sorry. Don't join the Pa race. We're here for you. And that's it. Well, like they treat them like, I don't know. I guess you could say, well, it's part of their larger plan. I don't know. But it's one of those things where it's like they're treating them both like, let's just say, for lack of a better term, real God.
Yep.
And a alien race that is actively there and actively does insert itself in stuff and is omniscient enough that they could sense or see that this is happening and step in and stop it.
I mean, I think the fundamental problem with their power is that you kind of have to assume that this is all part of their plan, right? Because they must know that this is happening if they know everything that's going on. So they know that the Pirates are interfering. That's the problem with this species as like a narrative device, where it's like if they know the future, they have their input is sort of irrelevant because they know what they have to do to fix things, or what Sisko has to do, which makes it all the more frustrating when they don't tell him what to do, but also when they don't show up. You're kind of like, well, this must be the plan, but I wish they would just explain it to other people, maybe.
Yeah. Do they ever make it a point that the Prophets can only talk to Sisko? Have there been other people who have had Prophet interactions? I can't remember.
Well, the Pirates are Prophets, so them talking to Kai Winn counts as a vision, I think. And they also talked to that guy who... there was a Bajoran in a couple seasons ago that went through the wormhole and came back from time. Remember him?
Sure.
The Prophets like pulled him out of time for some reason. He hung out with them for a couple hundred years, and then they spit him out into present day.
Yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar.
Yeah, I think he was talking to them. Yeah.
So it's established that the Prophets can interact with other people. So I like, because that's. You know, unless the Prophets can only act through the emissary, it seems weird. Yeah, it's either weird that they don't step in and stop this from happening, or this is part of their plan, and it's, you know, one of those
very unsatisfying if it's part of their plan.
Yeah, one of those weird things where if God exists, why did he let the Holocaust happen or something?
Yep, it's all part of the plan. Yeah, I think an interesting, you mentioned that whether or not they're wormhole aliens or gods. I think the series is firmly on the side that they are gods at this point. No, everyone seems to abandon, because even Ezri is like, we're not gods, we're not prophets. She has a line about that. So I think even the scientifically based characters have given up on trying to say that everybody, this is wormhole aliens. Let's get our heads on straight and deal with this as we need to.
Yeah, I wish it was like O'Brien, who was just so intensely Irish Catholic or something.
They're not the real gods. Just a lot of O'Brien ADR scenes where he's not on screen, but you hear him in the background going, "Not my God." It would improve the situation substantially. Him clutching a.
There's only one God, buddy, and his name's Jesus Christ.
Put them on the pile with Zeus, Poseidon. Put all the prophets on there too. Yeah, that's pretty much it. To wrap this one up, I thought this episode just moved better. It felt like it was like a forward progression in things, even if there are still problems with the storylines that are sticking around. We can't have that much longer with Worf and Ezri, right? They're on their way back to the Federation, so
I hope we get to see the entire trip.
Yes, where they reopen the wounds here. They have sex again, and they reopen the wounds.
This time they have sex, but just like as friends, because they know nothing weird can happen now because they're just friends. And boy, are they mistaken.
It's still so weird when they put like real world-ish dialogue where Worf's like, you had sex with a bunch of guys.
There was nothing that weirded me out in this episode, arguably in the entire series, more than hearing Worf say making love. It reminds me, I read this comic years ago. It was this Viking comic. And, it was set during Viking times, but all the dialogue was really modern. And there was like a line where this one guy was like, I have to go rescue my girlfriend. I don't think they had girlfriends in the 900s.
You just took a wife. You literally took her. And that's all it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Him saying make love and him like sort of pontificating on, he's like, when I make love, it's spiritual, baby. I wasn't just giving it to you. I was really thinking about what was going on. It's like, this is disgusting, Worf. I don't need to hear
I'm
about
surprised this. Ezra wasn't like, see, Worf, this is why we can't be together, because you just take things too seriously.
She says it wasn't that good. It's like, will you guys stop talking about this? This is absurd. Like, there's no reason for her to be qualifying his sexual promiscuity or whatever is going on there.
Yeah. The episode, I think that's what's making it so difficult for me is because, it does move better than the last one, but it's still moving pretty slow. Like, if this had been the second episode in the line, I don't think I would have minded it as much, because they do, get you into some plot points and seeing how things are shaping up.
Yeah. The second episode is the traveling on a ship somewhere episode. It's the waiting to get to the fireworks factory.
Yeah. And then they get to the fireworks factory and you find out that the only reason you went to the fireworks factory is so you could take some fireworks back to where you came from.
Yes. And it was C- sex that got you there in the first place.
But
it would have been better if they'd have taken their clothes off, I think, was the main problem with what they were doing there in the campfire sexual escapades.
Hey, man, you don't need your shirt off to get it done.
That's right. That's right. There's a fly for a reason.
Yeah.
Anything else to talk about with this one? Strange Bedfellows. I like, we haven't really commented on, I like the titles so far of the final chapter episodes. I think the Til Death Do Us part was nice. This is probably my favorite one because they do a fairly good job of thematically tying all the plot lines into the idea that odd couples are paired up with each other here, or people who don't really belong with each other are paired. So you have Kai Winn and Dukat, and then you have Damar and the Dominion, and then you have Worf and Ezri.
Yeah. No, it's a good title.
Anything else to talk about?
I don't think so.
Right.
I was, this is another one again where I was waiting for the Breen to reveal themselves as allies of some sort. I wasn't counting on Damar switching sides.
Oh, really? You thought the Breen were going to be the
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why it just keeps standing out to me. You know what it was? So it's because, in the last episode, they talk about the Klingon thing and not knowing what they look like. And then in this episode, Wei-Yun is like way too open with giving them access to every single Death Star plan that they have.
Yep.
Damar's like, well, those are our secret files. And like, oh, no, they're cool. Don't worry about it. They're just, rifling through everything, getting all their passwords for all their Netflix accounts and stuff.
What is this Damar XXX folder? What does this mean?
Yeah, that's taxes.
Those are my protocols. My secret protocols.
Cardassian girl-on-girl taxes. But they keep pushing them into position where it's like they're getting a little bit too much access.
Yeah.
It feels to me like if they're not, and if in 2 episodes they haven't turned yet, I feel like they might end up being involved in the resolution of this war by turning on the Dominion.
I think the thing is that in order for that to make sense, they have to kind of portray the Dominion as more desperate for them, which
that's kind of how
across.
I felt.
Yeah,
I felt that's how they were doing it. Like they were turning to the Breen, because Wei-Yun kind of has that sort of dialogue, doesn't he, where he's like, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what it is, but he pontificates a little bit about how the Breen will
change the shape of the war.
Yeah. He makes it a point to be like, adding the Breen is a game changer for us, and it needs to happen.
Yep, exactly.
So they are getting across the desperation, and their desperation is coming at the expense of the Cardassians and both. So yeah, I think they're setting that stuff up really well. I thought all that stuff was great.
Let's take a break. We'll play a clip, and then we'll come back, read some patron thoughts, give our final thoughts about Strange Bedfellows.
They've never spoken to me, never offered me guidance, never trusted me with the fruits of their wisdom. And now, I'm supposed to step down as Kai in order to be blessed by them. No. I have worked too hard, waited too long to give it all up now.
You shouldn't have to. Merciful gods don't ask their children to make such sacrifices.
The prophets have turned their backs on me. After all I've done for them, all the pain I've endured for them.
They're not worthy of you, Adami.
I'm a patient woman, but I have run out of patience. I will no longer serve gods who give me nothing in return. I'm ready to walk the path the power race have laid out for me.
I'll walk with you. And no one will be able to stand against us.
Those who dare to try, the Federation and its Vedic puppets, the false gods and their precious emissary, they'll all be swept aside like dead leaves before an angry wind.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. We have to thank a couple new patrons. Daniel and Tom are the newest patrons. I didn't mention them at the start, but I wanted to mention them now. And if you want to become like Daniel and Tom, you can go to patreon.com/the Pensky File. Support the show, a couple $1 a month. It gets you extra stuff, extra podcasts, and all that good stuff. There's about 60 of them available now. We talked about movies, talked about Black Mirror, talked about random nonsense, Q&As, all that stuff. Patreon.com/the Pensky File is the place to go. And as always, we thank our Captain tier supporters with a special shout out. So, special thanks to go to Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Quark, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Moss, David Beardmore, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, IC Unicorns, Yarpy, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Cal Barrett, Mad Courier, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elwood, Samuel Custer, Grim Santos, Sean Spinobi, Tark Latif, Tom Howells, Vault 13 Hero, and Will Yates. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. And now we're going to go to patron comments. If you're a patron, you can leave your comments about upcoming episodes and we read them. There's only 4 here. I think we're ahead of the crowd, actually, Clay. We might be exceeding. We had to do a busy Thanksgiving recording schedule, so this is where we are. We might be ahead. There's only 4. Poindexter G. Strange Bedfellows. I like that Damar is simply amused when Worf kills Wei-Yun. We see that the alliance with the Breen is forming cracks in the Dominion/Cardassian alliance. And where the hell did the Breen come from, and why do they look like bounty hunter Leia? If they're such a big deal, why have we never heard of them before? But the greatest part is Martok's story of his wife and his Targ. Andrew Cherlog says, this episode continues the threads of the last 2 episodes with one huge new plot. Kai Winn realizes she has made a deal with the devil. Seeking advice from Kira, she does not hear what she desires and clings to power, even as releasing it will set her free. Personally, I've used this clip in a sermon to talk about real repentance. It's interesting.
I hope you weren't too offended by our O'Brien cracker.
Zam Nuclear Wessel says, Strange Bedfellows, Damar's ongoing amusement at the death of Wei-Yun 7 is an all-time great television moment. It's interesting on rewatch, though, he complains to Wei-Yun 8 for not fulfilling his promise to help the trapped Cardassians when Wei-Yun 7 was the one that made that promise. That's interesting. Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, we didn't even talk about how great that scene is when Worf just Steven Seagals him.
Yes.
Out of nowhere. That was just, it was so great. I really enjoyed that.
He comes up, he brings up Bashir, which is the one point that obviously you don't want to do, and then he gets his neck broken and gets replaced. I was, the Wei-Yun replacement scene is funny because it doesn't seem to be any sort of catch-up. The new clone seems to know everything right up until the point of death, so they must have some kind of Wi-Fi capability where all the memories get sent back or something. I still wonder why they don't just make multiples of them, obviously, besides like the technical limitations of what you can do on TV. But you think you just have billions of Wayuns walking around.
Well, you don't want to waste resources.
Final comment, Norman Buckwald. Strange Bedfellows, most of the titles in this arc are pretty good, and this one is probably the best. Dukat and Winn are reason enough, but you also have the Cardassians and the Breen, which is not so mutual at all. Not as strong, but needed to run its course was Worf and Ezri post-admission of Ezri's heart, and Martok's observation of the war between Sisko and Cassidy. But it's the story of Winn's official turn to the dark side where it becomes truly powerful. That scene with Kira is one of the most important in the entire season, in my humble opinion, and definitely what makes the final Bajoran plot very worthwhile. Kira may have had her own selfish intentions to want Winn to step down as Kai, but ironic as it was, Kira was who probably at best spoke better than any prophet could that she should step down and resist the temptation of power. Instead, Winn capitalizes on it because she will never let that go, and no longer seems to care that incognito Dukat is part of the Power Wraiths. That final moment of the episode where Winn makes her choice and does not look back was perfect inevitability of her character arc. 4.5 out of 5.
So, do you need Dukat to have Winn go through this story? Because I kind of don't feel like you do.
Do you need Dukat to cause this to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's... I feel like you can do just as much with just her. Like if you had gone down the line of the original vision where it was like she gets this vision from what she believes to be the prophets who are like, you got to keep Sisko in line. And then she actually acts on that to try and do that. And through her actions and through her dealing with this, then comes to at a certain point, she starts to reject it or something, and then learns more organically that it's the Power Wraiths. You could still have the scene where they're like, hey, we're actually the Power Wraiths.
Yep.
Hey, I don't
we're
know
the Power
Wraiths.
Sorry.
I don't know if you need Dukat to be the catalyst for all this. Like, do you really need him to show up and, have them have sex in order for her to go down this path?
We don't need the sex. Good use of go down. We don't need the sex, but we do need... I just think that Winn is not prominent enough of a villain for me to totally believe that she would be the ending turning point without Dukat there. So
well, I don't know. I guess I really like the Mozart and Salieri kind of thing that they have with the emissary and her.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes Salieri such an interesting villain is that he does what he does based entirely on his own hubris and spite and pride,
Yeah.
And for someone like Winn, I feel like that would be a more satisfying kind of turn for her instead of just, here's this, hot older man with bad hair who is leading me down the path of the Power Wraiths, which is, I'm not going to say what that represents, but I think we can all use our imaginations.
I like the fact that Dukat is using the Bajoran religion against them effectively. Mm-hmm. I think that that's a good final plot for that character to do, to take like the thing that the Bajorans considered to be their salvation from the occupation is the fact that they kept the faith the entire time. Mm-hmm. And for him, the brutal oppressor, to come back and twist it against them, I find very satisfying. And I just think that Winn has not been prominent and is not a good enough actress in the role to portray the depth of that turn in a satisfying way. I think because Dukat is more central to the villainy aspect, I think, than Winn is. So I need him in this situation, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you could dial it back with what he actually is doing here, probably. Yep.
I would have introduced his plot earlier and not had it been right on top of her turn. Sort of like if he was early in the season influencing her and then stepped back and she progressed from there. I think that works too.
Yeah, or even like you could even, well, I guess you need to have that scene with Damar and stuff. But I was wondering if you could even play it as almost a surprise. So like Kai Winn shows up and she's like, "Have you met my new friend, Tal Gudat?" And he's like, "Hello, I'm definitely a Bajoran, and I'm definitely here to help."
Let us pray.
Bring me your sexiest Bajoran women so that I might anoint them.
Do you think in 1945, if Hitler shaved his mustache and went up to a group of Jews, they wouldn't be like, who is this guy?
dyed his hair blonde.
And had like a very distinctive German accent. You know, I think Hitler had like this high-pitched sort of squealy voice, which is kind of like Abraham Lincoln or something. But like, I just find it difficult that no one's like, you look familiar. You sound very familiar. 50 years of experience.
No, I'm just another person from the Bronx who just likes baseball.
I think we're done talking about this one. Thank you guys for listening very much. All the social media links are down below. Patreon.com/The Pensky File is the best way to support the show. And Facebook, Twitter, Discord, Instagram, all that stuff down below.
Also, to be fair, we don't know that he didn't do that because, let's be honest, he was living in Brazil.
That's right. Argentina, right? Or
Argentina.
Argentina is the sanctuary. We're talking about Hitler, obviously, as we're wont to do on this podcast. Let's see here.
Gul Dukat actually lives in Argentina currently.
The little chyron at the end of the finale for this series is just going to have a little sentence update about what all the characters are doing.
Yes.
That's it. Anything for you to say, Clay?
I don't think so. I think we're the Q&A episode of Badass is probably going to be up in 2 weeks, I think, or maybe a week. I can't remember. It's whenever the next issue of Curse of the White Knight comes out, it's going to be on or around that date.
Okay. Good for people to know, so you can keep your eyes open for that one. And then
we're covering The Last Jedi on Friday.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So that'll probably be out this week that this comes out, I would think. And then we'll try to finish up Solo in time for that. But yeah, you can look forward to The Last Jedi.
So I guess at this point in the future, when this comes out, we have already recorded.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, okay. We have. Yes. You are a true prophet, Clay. You can see all the ins and outs of the timeline that are coming about.
Yes, and you had some hot takes, I can tell you that much. Hot takes.
Be well, my child. All right, I guess we're done. You can look forward to all the other content. Happy Thanksgiving, if you didn't hear us say that last time, but this is past that. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving weekend. Hope the family treated you well. Hope you had an enjoyable time. And I guess we'll be back with The Changing Face of Evil is the next episode. So...
A little less subtle of a title.
We'll see you in a couple days.